Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a bit different. We're skipping the usual prepared remarks from AbbVie's Q3 2025 earnings call.
That's right. We're diving straight into the Q&A because that's where the real pressure test happens.
Exactly. Analysts grilling management on strategy, risks, the future, our mission. To pull out the core insights on growth, competition, policy, all hidden in those spontaneous answers.
Yeah, the Q&A really reveals how they're planning to navigate things like IRA, PBM changes, and just the intense immunology competition. Plus, sometimes you get these surprising pipeline details dropped in.
Okay, so let's start with those big external risks. Policy is always hanging over pharma. What were analysts hitting hardest on regarding the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act?
Well, the focus was pretty sharp. It zeroed in on two key neuroscience drugs, Vraylar and Linzess. They're in that first group up for negotiation.
Right, the first cohort.
Exactly. And management, they were pretty upfront. They acknowledged the administration seems to be pushing for, quote, greater reductions this time around compared to the very first drugs negotiated.
Greater reductions. That sounds, well, not great. How big a hit could that be? And did they offer any reassurance about their overall financial picture?
Okay, this is the crucial bit for listeners. Despite acknowledging that push for deeper cuts, management was really emphatic. They stated these outcomes for Vraylar and Linzess will not impact their long-term guidance.
Not impacted at all. How can they be so sure?
It really comes down to timing. The actual negotiated prices for those two drugs, they don't kick in until 2027.
2027. Okay, so they've essentially bought themselves quite a bit of runway.
Precisely. It de-risks the near term, allows that Skyrizi and Rinvoq growth to keep compounding and basically absorb that hit when it finally arrives way down the line.
Right, which leads us nicely into the more immediate commercial stuff. What about PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers? There was a question about new models, like that Cigna announcement.
Yeah, the vertical integration question. And honestly, their response showed, I'd say, a remarkable level of confidence in their adaptability.
How so?
Their core defense strategy boils down to this. Rely on genuinely differentiated medicines. They kept pointing to their strong performance outside the U.S. in markets where you don't have the same PBM structures or heavy direct-to-consumer ads.
But isn't just saying we have good drugs a bit standard? Is differentiation really enough when PBMs are changing the formulary game?
That's a fair question. And the nuance, I think, is that their confidence isn't just wishful thinking. It's based on their history of securing access globally, whether it's a rebate system or a net price system.
So track record matters.
It does. Their argument is if the drug offers significant clinical value like they claim for Skyrizi and Rinvoq, payers will ultimately find a way to cover it. It's essentially a bet that real innovation trumps cost control tactics in the long run.
Innovation as insulation. I like that. Okay, speaking of innovation, let's pivot. Let's unpack the engine room, immunology, and that surging neuroscience portfolio. That combined Skyrizi and Rinvoq growth was, well, huge.
Huge is an understatement. We're talking combined sales growth well over 40% year over year, just massive numbers.
Break that down a bit.
Okay, so Skyrizi global sales, up 46%. Rinvoq, close behind, up 34.1%. These aren't just good numbers. They show that Humira transition isn't just happening. It's like accelerating faster than maybe some expected.
And a big part of that acceleration is in IBD, right?
Yeah.
Inflammatory bowel disease. Competition there is just fierce. What did the Q&A tell us about their position in Crohn's and UC?
Yeah, IBD is a real battleground, but their strategy seems to be working incredibly well. They're on track to almost double their combined IBD sales this year alone.
Double.
And here's the killer stat. In the U.S. market for Crohn's disease, they're now capturing roughly 50% half of all new or switching patients across all lines of therapy.
Half of all new patients moving on to advanced therapies. That's market dominance, isn't it? Suggests they're the go-to choice.
It really does. Signals huge physician confidence. Now, analysts did poke at this, asking about competitors, especially new IL-23 drugs like Trumpy gaining some share.
And how did management respond? Did they sound worried?
Not really, no. Actually, their framing was interesting. They see the expansion of the entire IL-23 class as a positive. They explicitly said it's not a zero-sum game. Meaning the whole market is growing rapidly. Think about ulcerative colitis, UC. Just over a year ago, maybe 5% of patients were on an IL-23. Today, It's pushing 40%.
40% penetration in just over a year. That's incredible market creation.
Exactly. So even if competitors gain some share, the overall pie is expanding so fast. And AbbVie, with Skyrizi leading that class, is capturing the biggest slice. A rising tide lifts their boat the most, basically.
And Rinvoq just got a boost in IBD too, didn't it? Something about the label.
That's right, yeah. A potentially significant label expansion. Rinvoq can now be used before anti-TNFs in IBD if the doctor thinks anti-TNFs aren't clinically appropriate.
So jumping the queue, essentially. Skipping that older class of drugs.
Kind of. Anti-TNFs are usually the first advanced therapy tried. Being able to use Rinvoq, a really effective JAK inhibitor, before that standard step gives docs way more flexibility, especially against older drugs and biosimilars. They called Skyrizi and Rinvoq their powerful 1-2 punch.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears to the other big growth story. Neuroscience. Up nearly 20%, now their second biggest area, and growing fast. Where are the highlights there?
It's impressively broad. You've got migraine, where Qulipta is now the #1 prescribed CGRP for prevention. That's about a 7.5% total share, which is significant uptake for that newer class.
Okay, #1 CGRP.
Solid.
Very solid. But where the Q&A really dug deep was Parkinson's, specifically VLEV.
Right. VLEV sales jumped 40% just from the previous quarter. And management talk about transformative patient feedback. What's the breakthrough with VLEV? It really boils down to stability and quality of life for patients. The big differentiator is VLEV provides 24-hour coverage. A lot of the existing competitors, they only cover about 16 hours.
Ah, so that gap.
Exactly. That gap often means difficult morning off periods for patients. VLEV gives smooth, consistent control day and night. Neurologists I've spoken to say that 24-hour profile is the #1 reason they're switching patients. It reduces the need for extra oral meds, and it has low rates of dyskinesia and sedation, which are common problems.
So a real quality of life improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And they also submitted tavapadon for approval, another Parkinson's drug.
Yes, and the excitement around tavapadon is mostly about its potential safety profile. It seems to achieve efficacy that's getting close to levocarbidopa, the gold standard, but one with notable side effects. Only tavapadon showed remarkably low rates of severe side effects in trials.
Like what kind of side effects?
Things like impulse control disorders, which can be really problematic, were seen in only about 1% of patients, and sedation was under 5%. So it could be a really important option, especially maybe for earlier stage patients who need good efficacy but want to avoid those difficult side effects.
Okay, that's a strong current portfolio. Let's look ahead now. Section 3 in the Q&A seemed focused on the next-gen pipeline. What catalysts are coming in the next, say, 6 to 18 months?
Management gave a pretty clear roadmap. In immunology, look for data next year on IBD combinations using Skyrizi as the base and adding newer agents like lutikizumab or another called alpha-4 beta-7 382.
Okay, combo therapies. What else?
More immediately, regulatory submissions are planned for Rinvoq in 2 new areas, alopecia areata,
Hair loss.
right, and vitiligo. And the vitiligo one is potentially huge because it could be the first systemic or whole body treatment approved for that condition.
First systemic for vitiligo. That is a big deal. Did they put a number on that opportunity?
They did. They estimate the combined peak sales potential for this next wave of Rinvoq indications, vitiligo, alopecia, others, is at least $2 billion.
Wow. So just expanding Rinvoq's label is like creating another medium-sized successful drug's worth of revenue.
Exactly, leveraging an existing powerhouse. Then shifting to oncology, there was talk about Temagay. What's the story there?
Temagay seems to have really broad potential across different solid tumors. They confirmed plans for a phase 3 trial in colorectal cancer, CRC. That follows phase 1 data where, combined with bevacizumab, it showed a 30% objective response rate, or ORR, meaning tumors shrank significantly.
30% ORR in CRC is pretty good.
It is, and even more striking in certain patient groups, like those with MET-amplified tumors, think some lung cancers, and SCLC, the ORR was as high as 69%.
69%. Okay, that's definitely raising eyebrows. Shows real potential in tough-to-treat cancers. Lots of options there.
For sure. Now, the one that maybe got the most buzz, the Gilgamesh acquisition in neuropsychiatry. This is that novel psychedelic asset, right?
Yes, this is a really interesting strategic move into a cutting-edge area. The asset uses a novel mechanism, and the whole idea is to deliver rapid, strong, and durable antidepressant effects from just a single short session in a clinic.
Single session and short duration of hallucination, was it?
Correct. That's key. It has a much shorter period of psychoactive effects compared to older psychedelics. The goal isn't maintenance therapy. It's a rapid reset.
So potentially shifting away from taking a pill every single day for depression.
That's exactly the aim, trying to revolutionize major depressive disorder treatment. The phase 2 data they mentioned showed really large effects compared to a low-dose comparator. It suggests a powerful, fast-acting benefit, turning depression from maybe a chronic daily thing into a short-term, potentially curative intervention.
Fascinating.
Okay.
Okay, and finally in the pipeline section, obesity, a huge market dominated by GLP-1s. What's AbbVie's angle with their amylin asset?
They're positioning amylin very carefully. The big focus seems to be on improving tolerability and durability compared to current options.
Tolerability, so fewer side effects.
Hopefully, yes. And durability, meaning people actually stay on the treatment longer. They expect phase 1 data in healthy people in the first half of 2026, then phase 1b data in patients with obesity around Q4 2026.
And why the focus on durability?
Management dropped a pretty stark statistic. Only about 30% of patients are still taking current incretin drugs after just 1 year.
30% stay on, meaning 70% drop off.
It's a huge dropout rate. So AbbVie's view seems to be, sure, maximum weight loss matters, but capturing that massive group of patients who can't tolerate existing drugs or don't stay on them is potentially a bigger long-term win. Improving adherence is key.
Okay, we've covered a lot of growth and potential, but the Q&A also hit on immediate headwinds, right? Where's the company feeling the pressure right now?
2 main spots. First, aesthetics. Global sales were down 4.2%. Management didn't mince words, calling market conditions challenging.
Why challenging? What's driving that?
It seems to be mostly low consumer sentiment, inflation hitting discretionary spending. Specifically, in the key U.S. market, the toxin market think Botox is basically flat. Stable, but no growth.
And fillers.
The HA filler market, often a bigger ticket item, has been down double digits, so people are cutting back there. Management said they're investing new campaigns, training centers to try and stimulate things, and they're watching consumer confidence closely.
Okay, aesthetic softness. And the other headwind inevitably is Humira erosion.
Yep, the big one. Global Humira sales dropped 55.7%. It's a steep decline, obviously. The silver lining, if you can call it that, is that the absolute dollar decline is expected to lessen in the coming years.
So the worst dollar impact might be passing.
That seems to be the expectation. The year-over-year percentage will still look bad, but the actual chunk of revenue disappearing should get smaller in 2026 compared to 2025. But still, navigating that continued erosion through 2026 is absolutely key, relying on Skyrizi and Rinvoq to fill that gap.
Right. Okay, let's pull this all together then. Thinking long-term outlook. Given how well Skyrizi and Rinvoq are doing, did management give any update on that aggressive 2027 revenue guidance they set for those two?
They did, and they basically confirmed they now expect to exceed that previous 2027 target for Skyrizi and Rinvoq combined.
Exceeded, okay.
Yeah, they pointed out they've already raised the overall 2025 company revenue forecast by almost $2 billion just since February this year. So the momentum is clearly strong, giving them confidence they're running well ahead of schedule on replacing Humira and building that new foundation.
If they're hitting those marks and feeling confident, what do you think investors might still be missing or underappreciating about the AbbVie story coming out of this Q&A?
Well, I think 2 things, maybe. First, the sheer breadth of innovation happening in immunology beyond just Skyrizi and Rinvoq. You know, the next wave, stuff like oral peptides, that sophisticated in vivo CAR-T platform they got with Capstan, it's deeper than just 2 drugs.
Okay, next-gen immunology was the second thing.
I'd say the depth and potential of the neuroscience franchise, it gets overshadowed by immunology's huge numbers, but they have strong positions in psychiatry, migraine, and now this really differentiated emerging leadership in Parkinson's with Vyalev and Terapadon. That's a serious long-term growth pillar in its own right.
That diversified growth pipeline sounds like it reduces pressure for them to do like a massive late-stage M&A deal just to plug a revenue gap, doesn't it? What did they say about business development BD?
They were very clear on that. The BD focus is squarely on finding assets that will drive growth in the 2030s and beyond.
They're looking really long-term.
Exactly. They explicitly stated they have no current need for large, late-stage, expensive deals, precisely because the current portfolio gives them such good visibility through this decade. Instead, they're doing lots of smaller, targeted deals, over 30 in the last 18 months or so.
30 deals, wow.
Yeah, across all their core areas, immunology, neuroscience, oncology, aesthetics, and now adding obesity. It's like they're building the next AbbVie block by block, focusing on earlier science with big potential down the road.
So wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway for you, the listener? This Q&A painted a picture of a company really operating from a position of strength, wouldn't you say?
I would. High confidence. They're firing on all cylinders with the near-term growth drivers. They seem capable of absorbing these policy headwinds without blinking on long-term goals, and they're methodically building out future growth platforms for the next decade and beyond. It's a complex transition, but they seem to be managing it very effectively.
They seem confident in moving past the Humier era into something much more diversified and potentially just as powerful. Okay, here's a final provocative thought to leave you with. Thinking about that Gilgamesh psychedelic asset for major depressive disorder, that single-dose, rapid response, short-duration model, could that represent the first truly fundamental shift in how we treat depression in decades? Moving away from chronic daily medication towards something more like a short-term, potentially curative intervention, something to think about.